Hey there, thanks for joining us and listening to the Jesus Focus podcast. Here you'll find down to earth takes on the big questions everyone asks about God. And these questions get straight answers that don't hide behind dull and confusing theological language. We take questions about God seriously enough to get silly, where appropriate, and try to make this conversational and often very funny. So, in today's episode, we'll be exploring the name of Jesus and how it relates to the culture that Christianity originated from. Without further ado, let's begin.
Was Joseph's last name Christ? Because, where else did Jesus get the name Jesus Christ?
Maybe his parents just thought it was a cool name.
What?
I'm just kidding. Christ was not his last name. And no, he didn't have a middle initial either.
And where he could get that name? Why do we use it? And what was his last name?
As far as we know, in those days, nobody had last names. You just had one name. Back then, people were just called by their first name, though you could be further identified by who your father was and by the name of the village you came from.
Okay, that makes sense.
Pretty common. What we think of as last names really just means the son of so-and-so. For example, in Scotland or Ireland, if you are named Kevin and your father is named Donald, you might be called Kevin MacDonald. The Hebrew equivalent of Mac is Ben or Bar. So you get names like Joshua Ben Joseph or Jesus Bar Jonah.
So he could have been called Jesus Bar Joseph.
Yes. Or sometimes he was called Jesus of Nazareth, since that was his hometown.
Okay, it's making sense, but then again, where does the name Christ come from if it's not his last name?
Christ is simply the Greek word for Messiah.
Oh.
The Greek word for Messiah is Christ, or to be more accurate, Christos. But the English version of the word is just Christ.
So Christ means Messiah.
Right.
Sorry, not to be a pain, but where do we get the name Messiah?
Well, Messiah is the English equivalent of the Hebrew word Mashiach.
So Jews call Jesus Mashiach.
Jews who thought Jesus was the Messiah actually called him Yeshua HaMashiach.
What does Yeshua mean?
Yeshua is Hebrew for Jesus. Or let me say it correctly. Jesus is the English word for Yeshua or Yahshua, which can also be Joshua.
I'm getting very confused. Is Jesus really named Josh?
You could say that, but historically we've just settled on Jesus. Of course, his mother would have called him Yeshua, as I said.
Let's leave it at that.
And his mother Mary would have been called Miriam.
Miriam.
Mary is the English equivalent of Miriam.
I think I've had enough names for today, but thanks. It's all very educational.
And Moses is just the English word for Moshe.
So Moses wasn't called Moses.
Actually, he was called Moshe.
It doesn't sound quite as impressive as Moses.
Moshe isn't bad, really.